and welcome to the first webinar of a new series from Rotary Youth Exchange and Youth Protection staff. I'm James Dietrich.
And I'm Logan Johnson.
As members of the Youth Exchange and Youth Protection team, it's our responsibility to assist club and district leaders to protect their youth program participants. This includes, but is not limited to, participants in RYLA, Rotary Youth Exchange, and Interact. As part of our responsibility to assist Rotary program leaders protect youth, today we are excited to share with you our newest resource to assist your program, developing a crisis management plan. We will begin today by introducing the document and making you more familiar with what is expected from you as part of your district's responsibility for youth safety. For your convenience during today's call, we have provided the new resource in many different languages in the Zoom chat. Take a moment to click one of those links in the language you prefer so you can follow along with us and review it in full after we end the session. After we introduce the document, we will hear from Shindo Kondo, a Rotary member from Japan who has implemented a crisis management plan for all Japanese districts after the earthquake and tsunami in 2011. Last, we will take any questions at the end of the presentation, but please feel free to use the question and answer function to submit a question at any time. The nature of crises is that they are unexpected. What you can do now to mitigate the effects of a crisis are essential when a crisis actually happens. So the best time to develop a crisis management plan is now. What we are sharing with you is a carefully developed set of protocols designed to help individuals deal effectively with real and perceived emergency situations when they arise. These protocols should be used by all your district's youth programs, including Rotary Youth Exchange, RYLA, and Interact. While some crises may be preventable, most are unavoidable. If your district has a plan with a set of procedures in the event of a crisis, especially when youth are involved, this will be the best way to help your district minimize the impact a crisis may have on health, safety, and security, and mitigate reputational risk to your district. And if you still are uncertain whether or not you need a crisis management plan, we want to remind you of two things. First, the global pandemic of COVID-19 has served as a reminder for all of us to be better prepared for the uncertainties of life. Second, if your district is planning to participate in Youth Exchange this Rotary year, having a crisis management plan is a requirement of participating in short-term exchanges beginning 1 October 2020 and long-term exchanges beginning 1 January 2021.
So first and foremost, this webinar is not a substitute for reviewing the document in its entirety with your district. James and I will highlight specific sections and go over how to get started with creating a comprehensive crisis management plan during this webinar. And as a reminder, this applies to all youth programs of Rotary, including RYLA, Rotary Youth Exchange, and Interact. Careful planning is critical to crisis management. This entails forming a committed team, carefully assessing potential risks that exist locally, educating volunteers and young people about the risks and their roles and responsibilities, practicing protocols regularly, and coordinating with experts to regularly evaluate and update the plan as circumstances change. So let's walk through the 6 steps to creating and maintaining a comprehensive plan for most crises that could affect your district. Step 1 is to designate a crisis management team, or CMT. An effective CMT will be a small group of 5 to 6 individuals. Keeping a small crisis management team is important as it will streamline your district's ability to meet, communicate, and coordinate action. These individuals should be made up of district leaders, club representatives, and local experts who will take the lead in developing a framework to protect against threats as well as the impact of the crisis. Each member of the crisis management team should have specific roles and responsibilities to carry out a response to an emergency, or alternatively, the crisis management team should appoint a group of individuals that are distinctly tasked with doing so during a crisis.
Step 2 is to determine the risks that exist. Different districts have different risks that are specific to their location, potential for natural disasters, and governmental acumen. For example, a district in Florida may need to consider the risk of hurricanes, while a district in Australia may need to account for wildfires. In addition to natural disasters, a district CMT must also consider viral outbreaks, crime, political unrest, and government instability. In short, the CMT has to work together to consider their unique circumstances, as well as its youth, volunteers, and partner districts abroad, in order to determine what risks may exist and what their impact could be on its program and activity. Step 3 is to consult with local experts. While the CMT should remain small, it is not recommended that the expertise resides solely in the CMT. It is important that your crisis management team identify and consult with external experts. These experts include law enforcement, local government officials, emergency medical personnel, local health authorities, etc. Reach out to any friends you may have in these respective fields, or find out if your local Rotary Club has any connections. Local experts can be incredibly helpful in developing processes and protocols for the risks you have identified. In addition to having subject matter expertise, these local experts may already have experience developing these protocols and may also play an active role in your crisis management response. Having a good relationship with these local experts will be essential to your own district's plan.
Step 4 is to develop a plan and protocols that address each type of crisis at varying levels of severity. Now that you have built a crisis management team, identified the risks, and sought counsel from local experts, it is time to apply all of this into an actionable plan. The crises you have identified are the foundation on which you should consider different levels of severity. For example, the worst case scenario, and plan for those as well. For example, preparedness for a tornado is the foundation, but what if a youth exchange student's host family's home was destroyed? And what if a RILA participant in the same area was injured or killed in the destruction? Having different plans in place that guide your response based on the level of risk a crisis is or may pose to the health, safety, and security of the individuals will make you that much more prepared when the time comes. As demonstrated by our ongoing response to the outbreak of COVID-19, communication is critical. This means that the crisis management team must outline the key responsibilities, such as who will be deciding when communication is necessary, who will create the message, and who will send this information. Other considerations include maintaining a secure record of updated contact information, specifying communications protocols based on the crisis, whether or not communication with the media will be necessary for the crisis, and specifically for youth exchange, the language barriers of students and volunteers who may not be fluent in the language of the country. Also remember, communication with young people and their families should be prompt, transparent, factual, and compassionate, as well as free from personal opinion or subjectivity.
The sixth and final step is to ensure everyone is informed, prepared, and trained on an ongoing basis. The most important thing you can do to mitigate risks to your youth programs is to focus on prevention. While crises themselves are not preventable, your ability to prepare your students and volunteers must not be delayed. This means that districts should ensure that all volunteers and participants are trained on how to keep themselves safe. Additionally, districts should ensure that everyone is aware and clearly informed of the procedures of your crisis management plan before any activity takes place. Moreover, you may consider crisis simulations as supplementary training. Much like a fire drill, this will test your district's preparedness and identify any vulnerabilities you may not have noticed before. One way to get started with preparation is to consult with a local university or youth-serving organization to ask for help in identifying potential risks, especially if these organizations participate in study abroad programs, camps, travel, or other high-risk activities. A youth-serving organization could be a school or a daycare, etc. They may even be willing to share a copy of their plan with you, act as a consultant or advisor to your crisis management team, or provide suggestions that could assist you in developing your district's plan. Let's briefly review all 6 of the major steps to creating an effective crisis management plan. First, designate a team. Determine the risks. Consult local experts. Develop a plan. Create a communication plan. And ensure that everyone is prepared.
Many districts have already created a comprehensive crisis management plan that are highly specific to their particular part of the world. A lot of you in the chat just now actually shared quite a bit about where you might have crisis management plans ready to go and where they may need some improvement. And next, we are proud to introduce Shindo Kondo to talk about the crisis management plan for the nationwide Japanese multi-district for Rotary Youth Exchange. Shindo is the general supervisor for RI Japan Youth Exchange Multi-District, colloquially known as RIGEM, and was part of the important process of creating Japan's crisis management plan after the sudden earthquake and tsunami of 2011. Please listen to Shindo's firsthand experience of creating a plan and learn a little more about the kind of tasks that are ahead of you as you do the same.
My name is Shindo Kondo, the member of Takatsuki West Rotary Club, District 260, Osaka, Japan. I have been involved in Rotary Youth Exchange for the last 30 years and have hosted 30 inbound students from about 17 countries. Today, I would like to introduce my career in Rotary first of all. As for the club relations, and I was the key member of the charter members of Takatsuki West Rotary Club, and I served the club secretary, club president, club board members, and vice president, many committee chairmen. As for district relations, I mean the District 2660 district relations, I served Youth Exchange Program chairman for 3 years, and also I was the former assistant district governor. And as for the All Japan 34 district relations, I was a former NPO, Rotary International Youth Exchange Committee Japan board member, and current Rotary International Japan Youth Exchange Multi-District Organization, RYJYEM, so we call the RIGEM, the founding member. And at the present time, I am RYJYM, RIGEM Executive Coordinator and Advisor. And as for the Rotary International Levels Relations, I served RY Youth Exchange Committee members for 3 years. And RY2004 convention in Osaka, in Japan, I served Youth Exchange Conventions, Executive Working Committee Chairman, and also the Youth Service Program Vice Chairman at the time at the conventions. 2004 and 2005, I represent Water Resources Task Force, RI Zone 3 Coordinator, and August 2005, I at all Australia Youth Exchange Chairman's Conference. I was that Rotary RI President Stan Harmer Special Representatives. 2010, the 39th Rotary Institute of Osaka, Japan, I was official aide for Rotary Foundation Trustee, Mr. Stan Harmer. The 45th Rotary Institution, Nagoya, Japan, I was RI President, Official Media Coordinators. And RI Convention, Seoul, and other past conventions, I served Youth Exchange Pro-Convention facilitators. And RI Convention, Atlanta, I was Innovation Speaker. And RI Convention, Hamburg, I was Youth Exchange, Pre-Convention Risk Management Session Facilitator, and so on. There was the rough the career of my the introduction of my career in Rotary. Today, I would be very glad to tell you the status of crisis management of Rotary youth activities in Japan. The most important part of the Rotary Youth Exchange Program, Rotary Youth Program, is to protect the human rights of our youth and ensure their safety. We, Japan Rotary, would like to tell you how we have built measures to protect the human rights and safety of young people over the past 10 years. There are currently 2 organizations in Japan, Rotary Youth Exchange Programs, and each is building the crisis management system according to their respective roles. First, Rotary RIJYEM, Rotary International District of Japan Youth Exchange Multi-District Organization, Risk and Crisis Management Committee. And the second, the Rotary District Youth Exchange Program, Risk and Crisis Management Committee. RIJYEM, Risk and Crisis Management Committee operates risk and crisis common to Rotary 34 districts across Japan. The District Youth Exchange Risk and Crisis Committee operates risk and crisis management in each district more closely and in line with each site. On March 11, 2011, at 14:46 p.m., we Japanese were attacked by a huge earthquake with a moment magnitude of 9.0. Approximately 17,000 people lost their lives due to the huge earthquake and accompanying huge tsunami. Furthermore, due to the radioactive contaminations caused by the meltdown of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power station, the area of 337 square kilometers is not able to live in people as of March 2019. At this time of this catastrophe, there were about 170 Rotary inbound students to Japan. We look confirmation of the safety of those inbound students. Unfortunately, however, the safety of the inbound student staying at District 2530 and 2520, which suffered from the earthquake, tsunami, and radioactive contamination could not be taken. First of all, the district governor's offices in those districts that hold information about inbound students have also collapsed. From this experience, we, all Rotary Club of Japan, namely RIJYEM, have established the following measures. One, first, RIJYEM has built a system that can check the safety of inbound students with an update. This system allows RIJEM headquarters to confirm their safety even if the governor's office in that Rotary district, which controls the inbound student, has grasped it. This safety confirmation system is named YESS, yes, Youth Exchange Support System. With this YESS, we will update the inbound student's current address, phone number, email address, host family address, phone numbers, and also email address, and also the sponsor district and officials, student parent address, phone numbers, email address, etc. Of course, this information of this YESS system is shared with each concerned district if necessary. Second, RIJYEM decide countermeasures against risk and crisis that occurred nationwide in Japan and send the guideline to 34 districts throughout Japan. For example, the guideline for COVID-19 that occurred worldwide has been issued to 34 districts and are still being issued. RIJYEM can send the guideline content to Rotarians who need the guidelines content sent by RIJEM. Each district is acting according to this guideline. For this nationwide crisis, RIJEM respects information from the Japanese government or the embassies and consulate of each country in Japan as an important factor in determining guidelines. Next, I will talk about each district youth exchange risk and crisis management committee. The first, at each district levels, a system is being built to assist the neighboring district in the event of the disaster or flood damage that damaged the governor's office. The second, Risk and Crisis Management Committee in each district operate more routine risk management that occurs in the district. One of its most important risk management is to prevent the youth from harassment. The third, members of the District Risk Crisis Management Committee include non-Rotarian justice and media, as well as Rotarians. In addition, non-governor Rotarian serves as chair of the Crisis Management Committee. The fourth, Crisis Management Committee members have a 3-year terms in many districts. Continuity and special skill for crisis are very important. Therefore, Rotarians with specialized knowledge and experience in crisis management should be members of the Crisis Management Committee. The fifth, in order to prevent sexual abuse harassment, it is important to train each Rotarian. The District Crisis Management Committee organized several district meetings of the club committee chairs or Rotarians, where harassment prevention training is provided. The sixth, in some districts, a hotline has been established for youth who have actually been harassed and abused directly to the District Crisis Management Committee Chair and Vice Chairs. The above is the current state of risk and crisis management in Japan. We learned a lot from the experience of 2011 March 11 huge disaster. Allied JYEM, RIGEM, manages risk and crisis at the national levels, and each district carry out detailed risk management in the district levels. We would be very pleased if our crisis management situation could serve as a reference for Rotarians around the world. Lastly, I would like to endorse our new crisis management plan development. These plans, based on the most important theory of Rotary and Rotarian, must serve and protect the life, security, and human rights of our Rotary children, the youth of Rotary. Yes, our youth is our future. Thank you so much for your attention. Thank you very much.
All right. We want to thank Shindo again live here today. I hope you all found that very enlightening. And Shindo has expressed to me that he is willing to be in contact with anybody who has questions about anything that he mentioned in that presentation regarding how RIGEM manages crises in Japan. So if you have questions about that, please reach out to us at youthprotection@rotary.org. Email us there and we can put you in contact. Many thanks again to Shindo for taking that time with us today. And we wanted to also note something that President Holger Kanak said in a communication to all district governors earlier this year in light of COVID-19. Quote, strengthen your youth protection efforts. Review and revise your volunteer and student training materials. Re-examine your policies and procedures, and consult experts to update and improve your crisis management plans. So you heard it here first, or maybe second from if you already received that communication from Holger. But Holger also believes that effective crisis management plan will make every district more prepared. Now, as we start to wrap up our presentation and move into the Q&A section, we wanted to make note of a couple of other sections in the crisis management document that we shared earlier. First, make sure to check out the best practices section. This can help your crisis management team to organize its thoughts as they work through the aforementioned 6 steps. Second, our resource document has a sample plan for all of you to utilize. To be clear, this sample plan is not a substitute for your own district's crisis management plan. Rather, this is a template for you to use as a guide and organizing tool. And last, we've provided appendices to supplement your crisis management plan. The first appendix is a sample district contact list and crisis notification protocols. Think of it as a phone tree if you're familiar with that concept. The second appendix is a debriefing questionnaire. This questionnaire should be customized according to your local circumstances, since it provides you an opportunity to reflect on crises and discover areas of improvement.
Thank you again for attending the Rotary Youth Exchange and Youth Protection Team's first webinar of this new series during the 2020-21 Rotary year. We hope that you will take this information and use this time to bolster your program as we move to start long-term exchanges again in January and short-term in October. At this time, we will be sticking around to take questions, so please type them into the Q&A function, and we will do our best to address all of the questions we receive. You can also email us at any time regarding crisis management planning at youthprotection.org. For Logan, I'm James, and from all of us at Rotary International, thank you for doing what you do for our wonderful youth programs. All right, well, I think we can move into questions now. I think the most prevalent question straight ahead is whether or not this presentation will be available later. It will be. We will have a recording of it, and it will be sent out later this week.
For sure. We would love to start taking some of our more specific questions about some of these concepts that are found within the crisis management document. And before we continue, I would like to provide you guys the links. Again, I know they may have been lost since I posted them right at the beginning. So here are those links again in the chat. If you do not have a copy of the document that we were referring to, you can now download that in the language of your preference in the chat. So just click one of those links according to the language you would like. And
soon they will be available on our public-facing site. We just need to get those uploaded.
Yes. All right. Well, James, do you want to take this first question here?
Certainly. Someone has asked, how do we create a plan for districts that include more than one country? And we recommend that you ensure that your crisis management team has representatives from each participating country and ensure that your policies and procedures will meet the needs of each country. If the needs are different, it may be best to adopt the policies and procedures that meet the highest requirements of one of the participating countries to err on the side of caution.
Absolutely. Now, it looks like we have another question here. You mentioned natural disasters, but what about infectious diseases like COVID-19? That's a great question, of course. And there are suggested policies for monitoring and responding to pandemics like COVID-19 in the Developing Crisis Management Plan guide that we've presented to you guys today. But you can also consult with your local or nationwide laws and requirements, as well as consult with local health experts to ensure that you customize your plan according to your specific needs. So it's very important to consult with local experts when you're creating a plan like this, because those are the people who are going to be able to assist you very directly based on what part of the world you live in. So it's a great question, though. Great question.
Certainly. And another question we received is, what is RI's role in a crisis? Well, RI will be here to support you with guidance and facilitate some communication and language interpretation needs when necessary. That's why it's so important to have a plan in place so you feel empowered to take care of things.
Absolutely. Looks like we have another one here. What happens if there is a crisis that attracts media attention and we are contacted by reporters? It's a very real concern. And that's a great question. It's not uncommon that when a crisis occurs for it to become a local, national, or even international news, like COVID-19, for example. Rotary's media crisis guidelines, available in the Brand Center, can help you prepare for a potential media crisis, and the Rotary staff are here to help you support you through the crisis. So you can reach out to us at any time. Your crisis management plan should also designate a media spokesperson and communications protocols in the event that a crisis attracts media attention. It's very important to designate specific roles on the crisis management team so that when a crisis occurs, everyone knows what their responsibility and role is.
Yeah, it looks like we have another question here. simply, what about data privacy? A question we have been answering a lot recently with changes to GDPR. The General Data Privacy Regulations, GDPR, which Rotary follows, describe that for legal minors, you must have verifiable parental consent and only use the data for a legitimate business purpose. In this case, that purpose is to ensure the safety and well-being of students, which is considered a vital service. You should only collect information with permission, use it for the purpose for which it was collected, and only share it with others who have a legitimate business need to see or use it. Make sure you provide your data privacy policies to students and parents and guardians.
Absolutely. We also had another question, again, of where can we download the guide? If you're currently here with us, I have dropped those in the chat, and I can do so right at the end again for those who may have missed it again. But we also will have them publicly available on Rotary.org on the Youth Exchange pages under the resources section very soon. Let's see. Any other questions, James?
Just scouring right now.
Let me check. So Arneldi says, my country has more than one district, and in order to make a crisis management team, should we make an agreement? And I will assume that by that question, you mean, should you collaborate with multiple districts within your country to create a single crisis management team? And I think that that's important to have that nationwide, the ability to respond on a nationwide level and be consistent with your approach. However, I would still ensure that each district has an appointed crisis management team, because occasionally things may only affect a single district and not an entire country. You can't always depend on something affecting a whole country. Like for example, with the tsunami and earthquake in 2011 that Shindo mentioned, that did affect a big portion of Japan, but it was only probably a few districts that were directly impacted. And the whole country recognized the importance of having a plan after that, and that's when they created these nationwide approaches. So I think it's important to have, yes, a nationwide presence if you can, but at the bare minimum, each district should have its own team appointed.
Definitely. And we do have a question here. What happens if we incur costs to our district during a crisis? Things like emergency flights, perhaps even canceled tours, things like that. Well, be sure your district program is prepared to accept those costs in your crisis management plan, and also work with your insurance provider. You may consider buying trip cancellation insurance as a way to prepare for such a possibility, but again, these are things that can be mitigated and addressed ahead of time.
Another great question is, should we share our crisis management plan with families and with families of youth and exchange students? Yes, students and families should definitely be aware of what your plan is and how to respond. That's a very important part of this process, is that everyone be aware of the protocols in place should a crisis occur. Now, it may be difficult to share those things, but do your best to ensure that both students and parents are definitely aware of the protocols.
Indeed, anything that students can know ahead of time how to keep themselves safe will help you in the long run.
Absolutely. Let's see.
Okay. So,
Questions here, yeah. Go ahead.
Building on the previous question about multiple districts in a country or even districts and zones that have multiple countries in them, like it always is beneficial to coordinate and collaborate with each other when possible. But ultimately, the greatest response you can have to a crisis will be at the closest, nearest, most local level. So as Logan mentioned earlier, start there at the district and then begin to build connections that go beyond that.
Absolutely. Another great question is, does Rotary International's senior leadership, such as the board of directors, play a role during a crisis? You're free to reach out to your regional director during a crisis, but ultimately your own local response is key to youth safety. So where a director may be of some assistance communicating information, disseminating that information maybe among other districts if possible, if necessary, but ultimately the responsibility is on you and your district leadership to ensure that a crisis is handled appropriately and puts youth safety at the first priority.
Certainly. And building on the question about sharing your plan with students and families, what about the actual training for students and families? Well, one way you can expose them to your plan is through inbound orientation. That'll be your first touch point to get them on the same page with you as to what is expected during a crisis and what kind of resources are available to them. Additionally, you may consider planned and unplanned simulations to test their preparedness and that of your host families as well. All of this can help make the students and the families and the volunteers more adept at responding to a crisis, and then everyone can work together to best address it.
Absolutely. Now, a great question. There was a question about what Shindo mentioned about the youth exchange support system. It says, thank you for this webinar. It's very helpful to organize all the proper things we already have. Can you tell us more about more tools like the youth exchange support system, if they exist? And what I would recommend is reaching out to Shindo directly to discuss with him how youth exchange support system works. I think it sounds like a great plan, and I think it would be helpful for other plans to mimic that support system. However, that is not a Rotary International resource, so we can put you in touch with Shindo if you reach out to youthprotection@rotary.org. That would be my recommendation there.
And we would be happy to do that.
Absolutely.
Now, what about when a crisis happens at home for a youth exchange student? A student at RILA is in another country, but there's a natural disaster in their hometown. Well, this is why building relationships with your partners and discussing the flow of information depending on where a crisis occurs is an important part of developing a comprehensive communication plan. And anything you can do to help the well-being of your students, even though they may be many miles away, it may be very fresh in their minds. And any effort you can do to help meet them with these issues will create a strong environment for youth protection.
Absolutely, 100%. Now there's a question from Paul in the chat, and it looks like he's asking, did Rotary International have its own crisis plan before COVID-19 for youth programs? And if not, does it have one now? And are you willing to share it? That's primarily, Paul, what we're looking to share with everyone today, which is sort of a template to get started on creating a crisis management plan. What is by no means a blanket approach. Like I said, it is not a replacement plan. This is not something that you should use in place of a plan you already have, or if you don't have a plan, just use it without changing anything, because it won't be very helpful. It is meant to be a starter for you to create your own either nationwide or district-wide crisis management plan. So that is how I would recommend you use the resource that we are given today, or that we gave to you today, rather. Let's see. That one.
Someone has asked, what if there is a cost to consultation from local experts, and how would we cover this cost? Well, this is first, you should utilize your Rotary networks. There may be opportunities to find expertise that can benefit your district and perhaps have little to no cost. But ultimately, you should budget for it and keep that in mind. And if it is absolutely necessary, consider using unused district designated funds.
Absolutely. Now, Charles, I'm not entirely sure what you mean by this question, but if you're asking, can we share the organization of a crisis management team, perhaps what each role should look like? And you'll find out a little bit more about the kind of roles that a crisis management team can play in the crisis management planning document. So I would recommend you take a look at the document as well. But if you have questions about what the particular roles of each person on a team should look like, we'd be happy to address those with you over email afterwards. And just email us at youthprotection@rotary.org, and we'll answer that question for you.
Definitely. I think maybe we could take one or two more.
Couple more. Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
You want to take the one about Rotaract there from Lisa?
I do, actually. So where does Rotaract fall in line with this? This is a great question. Rotaract, in order to be a Rotaractor, you must be a minimum age of 18, which in most countries makes you the age of majority. And what we're focusing on today is our youth programs, so those who are under 18. That being said, age does not discriminate in a crisis, and there should be any district-wide measure you have to ensure protection of everyone involved in Rotary, members of Rotary, including Rotaractors, including our youth program participants, including our volunteers. All of it will make you a stronger, more resilient district.
Absolutely. I want to call out Bob Jen, who submitted something via the Q&A function. It's not a question, but I'm happy to share this great example. Bob says that we dealt with an inbound youth exchange student living in Paradise, California, when the fire occurred over a year ago. She lost all her possessions in the fire, and we had a budget for emergencies, and were able to buy her a new wardrobe, costs for a new visa and passport, school books, a computer, etc. And Bob, that's a great example of just having funds ready to go and supporting your students, going the extra mile to support those students as well. That's a really uplifting way to think about crisis management planning, because it can be a very daunting topic. We tried to smile and everything for you through this whole presentation today, but it's a tough topic. And knowing that there are dedicated volunteers like yourself who are out there taking care of students and youth the best that they can, using a crisis management plan of some kind, that's what we're here to talk to you about today. So thanks, Bob, for that example. That was really great. Let's see here. Got that one. All right. And it looks like Lynn also asked in the chat if you would have permission to share this on a website. Absolutely. We will post the links for that and share the links for that afterwards. We'll probably be posting it to YouTube. So there will be a link readily available for people to share this session. So Thanks for
Yes,
that question.
we want this spread around for everyone to be prepared for crises.
Right. And if you have more questions, maybe you're processing a lot of things right now with what we talked about, or you're reviewing the document, no matter what, if you ever have questions about crisis management planning or anything else related to youth protection, you can email youthprotection@rotary.org. We will always check it. It's checked every day. So please
Multiple times a day.
Multiple times a day. James, in fact, he's the guy. He's your guy. So if you ever have questions about crisis management planning, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And with that, I think we're going to wrap up for today. Thank you again for joining us. We were very happy to address this topic, this very important topic, especially in light of the year 2020 with all of you. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us. And again, I'm Logan Johnson.
I'm James Dietrich.
And we'll talk to you guys in the next one.
Take care.